Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, Reason, Observing Reason, Observation of Nature. Continued. Previously, the connection of inner and outer in the organic shape, which is supposed to be present to observation, was straightway transferred to the sphere of the inorganic. The determination which produced this transfer can now be more precisely indicated, and resulting therefrom, we have still another form and connection of this relationship, namely, what in the case of the inorganic seems to offer the possibility of such a comparison of inner and outer, in the case of the organism is altogether absent. The inorganic inner is a simple inner which presents itself to perception as a property that merely is. Its determinateness is therefore essentially magnitude, and as a property that merely is, it appears indifferent towards the outer or the various other sensuous properties, but the being for self of the living organism does not stand on one side in this way over against its outer. On the contrary, it has in its own self the principle of otherness. If we define being for self as simple, self-preserving relation to self, then its otherness is simple negativity, and organic unity is the unity of a self, identical, relating to self, and pure negativity. This unity is qua unity the inwardness of the organism. This is thereby in itself universal, or it is genus. But the freedom of the genus is in relation to its actual existence, is different from the freedom of specific gravity in relation to shape. That of the latter is a freedom that merely is. In other words, specific gravity as a particular property stands on one side. But because it is a freedom that merely is, it is also only a determinateness which essentially belongs to this shape, or whereby this shape, qua essential being, is something determinate. The freedom of the genus, however, is a universal freedom, and is indifferent towards the shape or towards its actuality. The determinateness which attaches to the being for self of the inorganic as such falls therefore, in the case of organic being, under its being for self, just as in the case of the inorganic, it falls only under the being of the latter. Hence, although determinateness in the inorganic is at the same time present only as a property, yet it acquires the dignity of essential being, because as a simple negative it stands over against outer existence, which is a being for another, and this simple negative is, in its ultimate single determinateness, a number. The organic being, however, is a singular individual, which is itself pure negativity, and therefore destroys within itself the fixed determinateness which attaches to indifferent being, insofar therefore as it has within it the moment of indifferent being, and so too of number. This latter can be taken as merely a byproduct, but not as the essence of its vitality. But now, though pure negativity, the principle of the process, does not fall outside of the organism, which therefore does not have it in its essence as a determinateness, the single individual being, itself intrinsically universal, yet in the organism the moments of this pure individual are not developed and actual as moments which are themselves abstract or universal. On the contrary, their expression appears outside of that universality, which falls back into the inwardness of the organism, and between the actual existence or shape, that is, the self-developing individual, and the organic universal or the genus, there comes the determinate universal, the species. The concrete existence, attained by the negativity of the universal, or the genus, is only the developed movement of a process which runs its course in the parts of the inner existence of the shape. If the genus, as a quiescent unitary being, had within it the differentiated parts, and if too its simple negativity as such were at the same time a movement, which ran through parts which was equally simple and immediately universal in themselves, parts which here were actual as such moments, then the organic genus would be consciousness. But as it is, the simple determinateness, qua determinateness of the species, is present in the genus in a non-spiritual manner. Actuality starts from the genus, or what enters into actual existence is not the genus as such, that is, in general, not thought of it. The genus, as an actual organism is merely represented by a surrogate, by number. This latter number seems to mark the transition from the genus into the individual structured shape, and to provide observation with the two necessary aspects of the latter, one as a simple determinateness, and the other as a shape whose manifold nature is fully developed. The number, however, really indicates the indifference on freedom of the universal and the individual in relation to one another. The genus puts the individual at the mercy of the non-essential quantitative difference, but the individual itself, qua living individual, equally shows itself to be free. True universality, as we have defined it, is here only an inner essence. As determinateness of the species, it is a formal universality. And over against this, the true universality takes its stand on the side of the single individual, which is thereby a living individual, and in virtue of its inner being takes no account of its determinateness as species. But this individual is not at the same time a universal individual, that is, one in which the universality would have an outer actual existence as well. The universal individual falls outside of the living organism. The universal individual, however, as immediately the individual of natural structured shapes, is not consciousness itself. Its existence as a single organic being, individual, as a single organic living individual, must not fall outside of it if it is to be consciousness. Consequently, we have a syllogism in which the one extreme is the universal life as a universal or as a genus, the other extreme, however, being the same universal as a single individual or as a universal individual, but the middle term is composed of both. The first seems to fit itself into it as a determinate universality or as a species. The other, however, is as individuality proper or as a single individual, and since this syllogism pertains wholly to the aspect of the structured shape, it equally embraces within its scope what is distinguished as inorganic nature. Now, since the universal life, qua the simple essence of the genus, develops from its side the differences of the notion, and must exhibit them as a series of simple determinatenesses, this series is a system of differences posited as mutually indifferent, or is a numerical series. Whereas previously the organism in the form of a single individual was set over against this essenceless difference, which neither expresses nor contains its living nature, and whereas just the same must be said in respect of the inorganic, taking it as an existence in which the whole of its properties are developed, it is now the universal individual we have to consider, and not merely as free from any systematization of the genus, but also as the power controlling the genus which divides itself into species on the basis of the general determinateness of number, or which may adopt as its principle of division particular features of its existence, for example, shape, colour, etc., while peacefully engaged in this activity suffers violence from the universal individual, the earth, which, as the universal negativity, preserves the difference as they exist within itself, their nature, on account of the substance to which they have belonged, being different from the nature of those of the genus, and in face of the systematization of the genus. This action of the genus comes to be quite a restricted affair, which it is permitted to carry on only inside those powerful elements, and which is interrupted, incomplete, and curtailed on all sides by their unchecked violence. It follows from this that in existence, in its structured shape, observation can encounter reason only as life in general, which, however, in its differentiating process, does not actually possess any rational ordering and arrangement of parts, and is not an immanently grounded system of shapes, if in the syllogism of organic structured shapes, the middle term, which contains the species and its actuality as a single individuality, had in its own self the extremes of inner universality and of universal individuality, then this middle term would have in the movement of its actuality the expression of the nature of universality, and would be a self-systematizing development. It is thus that consciousness, as the middle term between the universal spirit and its individuality or sense consciousness, has for middle term the system of structured shapes assumed by consciousness as a systematizing whole, of the life of spirit, the system that we are considering here, and which has as its objective existence as world history. But organic nature has no history. It falls from its universal, from life directly into the singleness of existence, and the moments of simple determinateness and the single organic life united in this actuality produces the process of becoming, merely as a contingent movement, in which each is active in its own part and the whole is preserved, but this activity is restricted. So far as itself is concerned, merely to its centre, because the whole is not present in it, and is not present in it because here it is not qua whole for itself. Apart then from the fact that reason, in observing organic nature, attains only to a contemplation of itself as universal life, as such, it comes to see its development and realization merely in the form of systems distinguished quite generally, whose essential character lies not in the organic as such, but in the universal individual, the earth. And it sees that development and realization among these differences belonging to the earth in the form of arrangements which the genus attempts to achieve. Since the universality of organic life falls in its actuality directly into the extreme of singleness without a genuine mediation of its own, the thing before the observing reason is only something meant, and if reason can take an idle interest in observing this meant thing, it is restricted to the description and narration of the meaning, and fanciful conceits it finds in nature. This unspiritual freedom of meaning will, it is true, offer on all sides the beginnings of laws, traces of necessity, allusions to order and system, ingenious and plausible connections, but as regards law and necessity, when observation connects to the organic with the merely given differences of the inorganic, the elements, zones and climate, it does not get beyond the idea of a great influence. So too, on the other side, where individuality has the significance, not of the earth, but of the oneness immanent in life, and where this in immediate unity with the universal does indeed constitute the genus, the simple unity of which, however, is just for that reason determined only as number, and therefore sets free the qualitative manifestations, here observation cannot do more than to make clever remarks, indicate interesting connections, and make a friendly approach to the notion. But clever remarks are not a knowledge of necessity. Interesting connections go no farther than being of interest, while the interest is still nothing more than a subjective opinion about reason, and the friendliness with which the individual alludes to a notion is a childlike friendliness, which is childish if it wants to be, or is supposed to be, valid in and for itself.